This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. I want to do something completely different this year for the pre-draft run of content on this channel, and it's going to start with this video and go on with 3 more videos. And it's something that I've been wanting to tackle for a long time, but haven't really found the right way to tackle it. And I think this is how I think I want to go about it. Now, what is the ideal that I've been vaguely referring to for the first 30 seconds of this video? I want to do a redraft, but not in the way that redrafts are usually done, right? Redrafts are usually done in this way where every team gets to repick, and you know, it's an interesting exercise, but it's been done before. What I want to do is a redraft from the Browns perspective only. So if I could go into a time machine with everything that I know and go back to this draft, who would I pick? And not only that, let's say I do the 2017 draft, and this is what my plan is. I'm going to go back in a time machine and redo the 2017 draft with everything that I know. And then with those picks that I've made in the 2017 draft, I'll do the 2018 draft and then the 2019 draft to see how drastically different this team's fortunes could be if they would have drafted the right players at the right spots. And again, this is a hindsight exercise. So again, it's not like I'm saying they should have made these picks, but they could have made these picks, because one of the benefits of this exercise is that I'm not just picking people who I know is going to be good. I'm picking people who would be good and also would have been available at the picks that the Browns had there. So this is going to be a multi-video exercise. It's going to be at least 4 videos starting with this one. And before I get into the redrafts, I wanted to talk about what were some of the worst Browns draft decisions ever in the last 10 years. And the reason I want to talk about this is because these decisions, knowing why they failed, is key to fixing them if we have this theoretical chance to go back in time. Now, an honorable mention I'm going to put here is I'm not going to 2013 draft or 2012 draft. There are obvious mistakes in that draft. There's obvious mistakes in almost every draft that the Browns had, but I'm just trying to pick out some of the some of the bigger ones and some of the less talked about ones. Also, an honorable mention, Leon McFadden over the Honey Badger, Tyrann Mathieu. All-time terrible decision. I don't even think Leon McFadden took a pick. Another player is Bobo Wilson. Don't know what draft they took Bobo Wilson in, but Bobo Wilson never played for the Cleveland Browns. Same as Leon McFadden. So those two are just awful draft picks because they were like 3rd-round picks and they never took a snap even in the preseason for this team. But that being said, let's get to it. And the first guy I'm going to talk about is an all-time bad draft pick. And you guys know where I'm going with this. And some of y'all might think it's Johnny Manziel. And look, that was a bad pick, but it was at 22. You can make mistakes at 22, and it's not going to ruin your franchise. They drafted Justin Gilbert 8th overall, and I'm still not over that. Like, Justin Gilbert was such a bad pick. There's a number of things you can read about why Justin Gilbert was such a bad pick. 8th overall, they traded back from 4 just to get him. If you're looking at 2014 draft, you're going to see a million players you would have rather had than Justin Gilbert. He wasn't even a number 1 corner on a lot of people's boards that year. It just was a mistake. I think Kyle Fuller, one of the Fuller brothers was like the number 1 corner in that draft. He actually ended up being decent. We didn't take him as the first corner take. We took Justin Gilbert. It is the equivalent to taking Anthony Bennett in the NBA draft, but imagine instead of it being the 2013 draft, it was like a good draft. Justin Gilbert might have been one of the worst players in that entire draft class. He went 8th overall, and the Browns passed up on Khalil Mack to do it. They passed up on Aaron Donald to do it. They passed up on like at least 8 Hall of Famers to draft Justin Gilbert. It was a terrible pick. If I can go back in time, that's the first pick I'm changing. It is Justin Gilbert. Horrible pick. Could not be worse. It wouldn't have worked out no matter who drafted him. Just a terrible pick. The next pick on the list, or the next thing on the list, I think that was a big mistake, was in 2017, trading out of quarterback at 12 because you felt so good about DeSean Kaiser. The Browns in 2017 thought that DeSean Kaiser was as good as anybody and you can get him in the second round. The Browns, of course, had the first pick in the second round that year. And that line of thinking led them to pass up on. Nobody thought Pat Mahomes was going to be Pat Mahomes, but they weren't even interested in Pat Mahomes. And it also led them to say, nah, we don't want DeSean Watson. We feel like DeSean Kaiser's on a similar level. And we run into this every year where, hey, the draft is not an award show for college football. There is a factor that you're bringing in when it comes to evaluating these guys of how good can they be versus how good have they been. And DeSean Kaiser, nobody's going to argue was not a better college quarterback than DeSean Watson. Nobody made that argument. But people did make the argument that DeSean Kaiser could develop into a better pro because he had more skill. Well, not skill. He had more potential based on his size, athleticism, and arm strength. And at that time, a lot of people didn't think that there was much special about this. Like, think about like how good DeSean Watson's been in his career. Not a lot of people thought he was as athletic as he was going to be in the pros, or they thought he was only an athlete. A lot of people felt like he didn't have arm strength, which I've always felt like was a ridiculous argument. I remember that year I wanted the Browns to take Myles Garrett in DeSean Watson, 1 and 12. I thought that would be great. I also would have been furious if they would have took Patrick Mahomes, which I would have gotten over very quickly. But, passing up on a pick at Watson to go for more picks and DeSean Kaiser, I think puts in a bag exactly why the Cleveland Browns from 1999 to 2018 were a desolate wasteland for quarterbacks. Because if I could say the Browns' number one problem during that time, that 20-year span, it was this. They were always afraid to make a big move for a quarterback. That's why I have no problem with anything that they did with DeSean Watson. I have no problem with swinging on Baker Mayfield, number 1 overall, missing. Like, it was time to let it go, but I had no problem with the pick, even in retrospect. I would pick a quarterback number 1 overall again there. I don't think it's a waste. Because for 20 years, this team went quarterbackless, partly because they were afraid to take quarterbacks at the top of the draft. They had the picks. They never used it. We go back to 2004. Ben Roethlisberger, you could have taken him. You don't take Ben Roethlisberger. You end up thinking you're good enough with Jeff Garcia. It was a franchise mandate to try to hit a double with the quarterback position instead of swing for home runs, and we ended up striking out every time. Right? Oh, we could hit a home run with Ben Roethlisberger. Let's hit a double with Jeff Garcia. Strike out. You didn't hit nothing. Right? You go down and down the list of quarterback prospects that we did not swing on, that we missed out. You know what I mean? It's happened time and time again with this franchise. 2016, say what you want about Carson Wentz and Jared Goff. They would have been the best quarterback that this franchise had, either one of them, if you would have taken them. And you didn't take them because you wanted to trade back and get Corey Coleman, which I'm going to talk about that later as well. This franchise's biggest problem was that they were always doing half steps to solve the quarterback problem and never willing to go all the way. And that trade in 2017, it exemplifies it all. You don't want to trade up and try to get Pat Mahomes if you think he's a project guy. You don't want to get the most pro-ready prospect in DeSean Watson. But you're willing to take DeSean Kaiser in the second round because, hey, it's safe. We went 0-16 that year. It wasn't safe. Everybody got fired. So that is why that is there. Not just because of the caliber of player you missed out on, but because that philosophy is what killed this team for 20 years. And it's the biggest example of it. They took Tim Couch number 1 overall, and it took till 2018 to take another quarterback number 1 overall. Again, almost 20 years of refusing to take quarterbacks in the top half of the draft, despite having multiple opportunities to do so. Browns would have traded out of Andrew Luck if they could have. Like, that's how scary they were at that time. Just an absolute scary franchise, scared to take a quarterback, scared to make a play on a quarterback, scared to take any risk to get quarterback. So I know people complain about what we're living through now. I would take this as somebody who lived through that garbage. I would take what we're living through right now every single day of the week, because you know what? At least they're trying to solve the quarterback problem. You can agree or disagree with how they went about doing it, but they're trying to. They're not giving you Cody Kessler, Charlie Fry, Derek Anderson. They're not throwing out Brian Hoyer. They're actually trying to get solutions done. And since 2018, that's the number one thing I think that's changed, that has made me much more optimistic about this team's future, because the way they were going about it for 20 years was an absolute disaster that was cheerleaded by the draft experts who thought, oh yeah, it's a great idea to try to get a quarterback late and take a chance. No, those idiots were cheerleading this horrible stuff and then dumping on the Browns when we couldn't find a quarterback, following their advice. Local beat writers were cheerleading this. Like, it was being cheered on by so many people that we didn't realize that was a problem. But in retrospect now, that was the biggest problem with the franchise, was that mindset over trying to find a quarterback. The next bad pick, I'm going to go with Cam Ervin. Y'all remember how frustratingly terrible Cam Ervin was? He was supposed to be a center guard, tackle guy, the ultimate swing prospect, and he ended up just swinging on the bench. Like, that's really all he ever did with the Cleveland Browns. Every time he got out there, it was kind of an embarrassment. He wasn't athletic enough to pull that guard. He was too tall to play center, and he was way too unathletic to play tackle. Ended up doing nothing for the Browns. Became a decent player after he left Cleveland and had some nasty things to say about the city, which I understand why he felt that way about the city, because the city felt that way about him, right? Like we were saying nasty stuff about Cam Ervin. Okay, it was out there. I remember it. I don't blame him for having horrible feelings about the people of Cleveland. I would too if I were him. But that being said, he wasn't good here. Like, it wasn't like it came for no reason. He was horrible here. Horrible draft decision. I mean, in a draft where you took Danny Shelton in the first round, dog, like, for you to be the worst pick is kind of hard. But hey, man, you did it. Congratulations, Cam Ervin. He sucked. He sucked. All right, let's go. Corey Coleman here. Another he sucked all-star. Another trade back all-star. Have you noticed that trading back hardly ever works out for this team? Like, of all of the things that we have on this list that we all agree were terrible decisions, Corey Coleman, trade back. I believe Cam Ervin was a result of a trade back in a different draft. If it wasn't him, it was Danny Shelton. Pick which one you want to be proud of, trade back people. DeShone Kizer was a result of a trade back, because you just should have took DeSean Watson at 12. And then Justin Gilbert, another famous trade back. Trade backs are a little overrated. All right, trading back is a little overrated. And if you want to prove me wrong, man, tell me something other than Herschel Walker about the other time that it worked. Like, you know what I mean? It hardly ever works out for the team that gets obsessed with trading back. Trading back's been another virus that's killed this franchise. There's the obsession with trading back. And Corey Coleman is another example of it. You know, the Browns had the number 2 pick in that draft. They ended up at 15. The number 2 pick in the 2016 draft, and we ended up at 15. We refused. Again, if you want to know the Browns' problem and where it started to end, you look at when they started to stop. When they started to take the picks where they had them, right? If they had a top 5 pick, they took a top 5 player instead of trading back to eternity. But this was in the middle of that era. They drafted Corey Coleman, who was the best wide receiver prospect in that draft. I mean, he was awful. He got hurt a lot. When he played, he wasn't good, and he ended up getting traded for a conditional 2020 pick that I don't even think we got from the Bills. So great use of a pick there. those are the worst decisions that I have seen the Browns make in the last 10 years when it comes to the draft. Now, stay tuned for the redraft of 2017 and how that's going to affect the 2018 redraft and the 2019 redraft. Y'all stay tuned. Have a great day. Have a good night.